All right, so let's pull up this article because you just won't believe it. You all remember a decade ago, if you go to like YouTube, CNN videos from 2014, the right-wing nationalist issue in Ukraine was a real problem. The presence of Nazism in the Ukrainian government, the Ukrainian military, was a real problem. It was a problem until it... Oh, that's not at all where the camera needs to be. It was a problem until the Russia invasion of Ukraine. And it became a problem when Russia invaded Ukraine because all of a sudden the media needed to depict the Russian invasion of Ukraine as though it was the beginning of a conflict starting in 2020. No, it was 2022. 2022, sorry. So this problem, which had been historically a known problem, was the subject of much reporting, had to be erased, memory hold, in the Orwellian fashion from the interwebs because the existence of this problem that had been well documented for over a decade, if it continued to persist, might bring people's awareness to the fact that the Russia invasion of Ukraine is not where this conflict began. And so it was effectively erased from the internet. But some people didn't forget. Now, did I not actually bring this article up? Okay, I'm gonna have to bring one of them. Here we go. Here we go. I'm going to bring up the New York Times article itself. We'll go through it quickly, and then we're going to go through my tweets on it because I highlighted the important part. Oh, don't do it, you son of a... Okay, well, we're going to read the tweet, and I'll just go to the highlighted sections anyhow in my tweets because that's all that really matters. The article is in a tweet. The tweet says, the decision by some Ukrainian soldiers to wear patches with Nazi icons threatens to reinforce Russian propaganda used to justify the invasion. It also could give the symbols mainstream life after the West's decades-long efforts to eliminate them. Read that 5 times. That's the tweet. The article is entitled, Nazi Symbols on Ukraine's Front Line Highlight Thorny Issues of History. But let's just read this tweet one more time. The decision by some Ukrainian soldiers to wear patches with Nazi icons threatens to reinforce Russian propaganda used to justify the invasion. What was the Russian propaganda? That its military invasion of eastern Ukraine was an attempt to denazify Ukraine. Why might the decision of some Ukrainian soldiers to wear Nazi symbols on their uniforms reinforce Russian propaganda? Well, my goodness, if it's actually true, then maybe it's not quite Russian propaganda and it's actually just Russian justification. The idea that it's Russian propaganda would mean that it's based on something of a political lie. But if they're actually wearing Nazi icons on their uniforms, well, it does throw a wrench in the narrative that it's Russian propaganda if it actually exists. The problem of Ukrainian soldiers wearing Nazi symbols is not that the Ukrainian soldiers are wearing Nazi symbols. It's that it's going to actually lend legitimacy to Russia's purportedly propagandist pretext to having invaded eastern Ukraine the way it did. But let's go to the article. Just pick out some highlights, which I've screen grabbed just in case they decide to do some real Orwellian memory holding. Ukraine has worked for years through legislation and military restructuring to contain a fringe far-right movement whose members proudly wear symbols steeped in Nazi history and espouse views hostile to leftists, LGBTQ movements, and ethnic minorities. But some members of these groups have been fighting Russia since the Kremlin illegally annexed part of Crimea back in 2014 and are now part of the broader military structure. My goodness, I remember people saying this, and I remembered them being called Russian shills, Putin shills. Some are regarded as national heroes, even as the far right remains marginalized politically. Can someone explain how they can be both national heroes and marginalized politically? Because it seems that those two things are mutually incompatible. It's sort of like a flat hill, sort of like a jumbo shrimp. Sort of like an honest lawyer. Bada bing, bada boom. That joke will never get old. They're national heroes, even though they remain marginalized politically. Yeah. Sorry, if they become national heroes, by definition, they're not marginalized politically. The iconography of these groups, including a skull and crossbones patch worn by concentration camp guards and a symbol known as the Black Sun, now appears with some regularity on the uniforms of soldiers fighting on the front line, including soldiers who say the imagery symbolizes Ukrainian sovereignty and pride, not Nazism. In the short term, that threatens to reinforce Mr. Putin's propaganda. Do we not appreciate that if something's true, it's not propaganda? Propaganda, necessarily implies dishonesty, exaggeration, or weaponizing of falsehoods for political profit. If it's true, I don't think it can be propaganda. Maybe I'm wrong. And giving fuel to his false claims that Ukraine must be denazified. Can you understand this? This is the most egregious form of motivated reasoning you can possibly imagine. It's marginalized, but they're national heroes. There's not so many of them doing it, but they've worked their way up. What do they say here? Fighting on the front line. It appears with some regularity. Marginalized, no one's ever seen it, but it appears with regularity on the front line. The problem with all of this, not that it exists, it might reinforce Putin's propaganda. I mean, you have to be an idiot. You have to be an idiot to buy this drivel. Hold on, there's one more here. Let's see what this one says. This is also, they might not be in the order in which they appeared in the article. Oh, that's right. One of them said, don't worry, the images, yeah, it's Nazi stuff, but don't worry, they're only wearing it because it's a rock band. The image, while offensive, is that of a musical band, Mr. Hyman said. This is a guy, I think, from the ACLU, who said, or the AD, one of them. It's not a big deal, guys. It's a misunderstanding. It's a band. The band now uses the photograph posted by the Ukrainian military to market the Totenkopf patch. Totenkopf. That has to do with something with the head. Kopf's head. The New York Times asked the Ukrainian defense military on April 27 about the tweet. It's a tweet with a military man with the patch. Several hours later, the post was deleted. After studying this case, we came to the conclusion that the logo can be interpreted ambiguously. Nothing to see here. That's fine with me. Your explanation satisfies my curiosity. Thank you for providing it, and we can move on and pretend nothing ever happened. That's not even the worst part about it. This is the absolute worst part about it. Let me see here. And this one is the one that I think this is it. This is one that really irritates me. Listen to this. This is, by the way, the exact same rationale Lisa Bloom invoked to not discredit Tara Reid, because she didn't discredit her, she confirmed her story, but to set it aside. Lisa Bloom, for those of you who don't know, Gloria Allred's daughter, put out a tweet, which I've brought up multiple times, saying Tara Reid, who alleged that Joe Biden sexually assaulted her back in the early to mid 90s when she was working on the Biden campaign, apparently mentioned it at the time. Lisa Bloom, who also purports to be a lawyer for victims, says, I believe you, Tara Reid. We all knew that Joe Biden was handsy. You're not asking for money. You just asked to be heard. We believe you, and we have very much sympathy for you. But we need to fight Trump. So we're gonna defend one genital grabber to fight the other alleged genital grabber. That's it. We're gonna defend our enemy. We're gonna defend a known enemy to defeat our ideological enemy. Listen to this if you haven't already read it, because it's been up the entire time. Even Jewish groups and anti-hate organizations that have traditionally called out hateful symbols have stayed largely silent on the Ukraine Nazi problem. Why? Privately, some leaders have worried about being seen as embracing Russian propaganda talking points. The motivated reasoning behind this is mind-blowing. It's a foregone conclusion. It's Russian propaganda talking points, which means it can never be true, even if it turns out to be true. And because it's never true, even though it's turning out to be true, you can't condemn it, because then you'd be condemning something that's true that can never be true, because it always has to be a Russian propaganda talking point. And so you have Jewish groups, which typically call out the presence of Nazi symbols. You know, that's sort of what they do with like the OK hand symbol. They call out Nazi symbols when they don't exist, and then they don't call them out when they do exist, because they don't want to affirm their existence, because in affirming their existence, they'd have to admit it's not a propaganda talking point anymore. It's just a problem. And so Jewish groups say nothing about it because they're scared that if they say something about it, they'll be accused of being Russian propagandists, Russian shills. It's amazing. They're afraid that they'll be accused of that which they accuse others of doing for calling out fact. Much like Lisa Bloom says, we're not going to call out Joe Biden and we're going to protect his crimes because we've got to, we don't want to lose sight of our target. Questions over how to interpret such symbols are as diverse as they are persistent, and not just in the Ukraine. In the American South, some have insisted today that the Confederate flag symbolizes pride, not its history of racism and secession. And yet, the same media would say that anybody flying a Confederate flag is a racist. Anybody doing the OK sign is flashing a white this one came before the last one. The Anti-Defamation League considers the Totenkopf a common hate symbol, but Jake Hyman, a spokesperson for the group, said it was impossible to, quote, make an inference about the wearer or the Ukrainian army based on the patch. Only when you want to be willfully blind, you shameless hypocrites. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. Can it get worse than that? Hyman says I can't make any interpretations about why a military battalion with a history of ties to Nazi symbolism, Nazi history, who wear this. There's videos all over the place of doing bad things. I can't make any inferences as to why this guy was wearing it on his sleeve. But my goodness, I can sure as heck say that when Jack Posobiec gave the OK sign, it was racism. Oh my! And yet these groups wonder why they have not just no credibility, but why people view them as tools for evil. I don't want to come to any conclusions about why they had Nazi iconography. My goodness! And then meanwhile, a Jewish person gets lambasted on Wikipedia for running with the People's Party of Canada. Oh no! I don't want to make any. Now. Let's not jump to any conclusions. He might just be, promoting the rock band as they go to war. Maybe, if you're an idiot. Okay, I'm angry now. Sorry.